Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. Today coming at you with another EDH Elder Dragon Highlander deck. Today we're gonna delve into the Orzhov color, which means black and white. So, just right off the bat, this is not a deck that is defined by its general, it just uses the general's color. And basically I chose this general because it kind of fits with the the role play, so to speak. I sometimes make decks and put cards in that just make sense from a lore standpoint. And if you make an Orzhov deck, then the Ghost Council of Orzhov kind of makes sense. But anyway, let's take a look at it. So the Ghost Council of Orzhov is a legendary spirit for 2 white and 2 black. When he comes into play, or enters the battlefield rather, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. That's not too good. Or not too overwhelming. It's a 4/4, which is okay. And for 1, you can sacrifice a creature and exile the Ghost Council of Orzhov. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So, if this was a deck that would really abuse this, there would be a lot of creatures, to repeatedly sacrifice that always come back. This deck is not really that, but I think the sacrifice outlet on the general is not the worst thing. But yeah, so what else is this deck then focused on if not the general? Basically it's a life gain plus you lose life deck, so it's a draining deck very much. Let's look at how we achieve this with our creatures. First up is the Agent of Masks, which of course drains each opponent at the beginning of your upkeep, and you gain life equal the life lost this way. Which, the thing is with these drain everybody effects is that you will gain a lot of heat from that, obviously. So you really have to be careful when to play these cards. But for this deck I'm always gonna assume you're having a 4-player EDH, so this means 3 opponents. So you'll gain 3 life every turn and everybody else loses a life. That's okay, And coupled with the other effects in these decks, that's gonna be worth it. The Ashen Rider, which is a humongously expensive creature for 8, but when it enters the battlefield or dies, you exile target permanent, which is pretty nice. If you play this and then you can sacrifice it to the general to exile a second permanent. Neat. Atreus, the God of Passage. So it's indestructible, and of course, as long as your devotion is less than 7, devotion to black and white that is, it's not a creature. And whenever another creature you own dies, return it to your hand unless target opponent pays 3 life. That might play into the general's ability, but knowing from experience, most player will actually choose to lose 3 life. The thing is, you can say which opponent you target and then he has to decide, which is kind of interesting. So if you target somebody with really low life, he actually might let you keep the creature. But yeah. Then Aeli, Eternal Pilgrim, which has Death Touch. You can sacrifice creatures into her to gain life, or you can sacrifice creatures into her to exile target non-land permanent. The trick about this, you can activate this ability only if you have at least 10 more life than your starting life, which in EDH would be 50, of course. Shouldn't be too hard with this deck, but if the opponents focus you really hard, then yeah, that ability might not come into play that much. Then the Blood Baron of Viscopa. Basically it's a 4/4 with lifelink protection from white and black, which is good. The second ability only comes into play if you have 30 or more life and an opponent has 10 or less life. So both must be true. Then it's a 10/10 with flying, which is ridiculous. But most of the time, yeah, this will be very hard to achieve. The Chancellor of the Dross. This again, if you reveal it from your starting hand, you drain everybody for 3 and gain life equal to the amount of life that was lost this way. If you have this on your starting hand, be prepared to be target number 1 for a few turns. Just saying. The Cliffhaven Vampire, an easy, whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life creature. And that's very important. You can gain 20 life, opponents still lose 1 life, right? of course, if you get 20 instances of 1 life, that means an opponent loses, or all opponents lose 20 life, or 20 times 1 life, rather. The Crypt Ghast, it has Extort, which is really cool in this deck, so every time you play a spell, you can basically pay 1 mana more to drain each opponent, and it basically doubles your Swamp mana. The thing is, it's not that good, because I don't have that many swamps in this deck, but there's a few swamps that take advantage of this, so it's fine. The Dark Confidant, of course, to draw more cards, and yes, you lose life based on the drawn cards converted mana cost, but you get a lot of life in this deck, so that shouldn't be a problem. The Defiant Bloodlord is one of the win conditions, of course. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So, that is one of the key cards. If you have this out, you have to be fast, because this will be very quickly targeted. Drana's Emissary. This looks like a small effect, but if it stays on the battlefield for a longer time, this can really drain everybody. The Felidar Sovereign, that's an alternative win condition, and I had this discussion, I think, with a few people when we started playing, or when I started playing EDH, because I was under the impression that maybe for EDH some of these numbers, you know, change. The 40 life or more, that changes because you have more starting life. That's not true, of course. So basically, if you can play this, and for some weird reason, let's just assume you can put this onto the field like turn 3 or so, you basically win the game, because at that point most people cannot really do something to you. But yeah, the Kambal Consul of Allocation, which is pretty cool. Whenever an opponent plays a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2. So it's bringing people to decide against playing non-creature spells sometimes. Again, most of these drain effects, they look small, but they will add up in the end. Then Karlov of the Ghost Council. Whenever you gain life, put 2 1/1 counters on him, so he can get big very fast. And if you remove 6 1/1 counters, you exile target creature. Nice. Kotapeth's Soul Hoarder. He's a pretty nasty demon. Whenever a permanent owned by another player is put into graveyard from the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. That lose 1 life, you can basically negate that with this deck. Magus of the Mirror, you can sacrifice him to exchange life totals with target opponent. You can only play this during your upkeep, but this can really turn games around. You can do some really interesting plays with this kind of creature. The Mother of Ruins, classic, the mom, giving your creatures protection from a color whenever she taps. She's super awesome. Noxious Gearhulk, if it enters the battlefield, you may destroy another target creature. If a creature is destroyed this way, you gain life equal to its toughness. Just solid destroy creature with a creature tacked onto it, which is nice. The Pontiff of Blight, he has Extort, and all other creatures you control have Extort. So yes, this can trigger multiple times. If you have 10 creatures with Extort and play a spell for 1, you may pay up to 10 mana to trigger each of these Extort effects. So yeah, that can really be crazy. And this, Rock's Faithmender, if this and the Defiant Bloodlord are on the field, most of the time you will win the game very fast. Because this thing will double your life gain. Whenever you gain life, you gain twice that much, which means, of course, opponents will lose so much more life. Sangromancer, so whenever an opponent has dies, they lose 3 life, and whenever an opponent discards a card, which happens sometimes in EDH, there's some decks which do that, you gain 3 life. Pretty neat. The Scholar of Atreus, it's just a mana sink to let people lose life and to drain them, essentially. For 2 and a black. In late game, this can be pretty substantial, actually. The Suture Priest, whenever somebody else plays a thing, they lose a life. Whenever you play a thing, you gain a life, which is nice. The Tree of Prediction, is that how you pronounce that? Anyway, it's an 0-13 plant with Defender, and if you tap it, you exchange target opponent's life total with the Tree of Predilection's toughness. So if somebody has 40 life, you tap this, you have now an 040 tree, or plant rather, and they have 13 life, which is brutal in EDH, believe me. Vizkopa Guildmage. The first ability of this Guildmage is not that interesting. It gains, can give creatures lifelink. The second one is a Defiant Bloodlord on steroids, because basically it lets each opponent lose life, equal to the amount of life you gained this turn. Or you gain, rather, so you have to activate this beforehand. But it's to each opponent. The Defiant Bloodlord is only target opponent, so this is actually much better, even though you have to pay for it every turn. Now let's move over to the instances. There's 7 of them. Anguished Unmaking, exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life. Again, the lose 3 life, we don't care. Fated Retribution, destroy everything. Well, not everything, but pretty much everything. Mortify, just destroying creatures and enchantments. Murder, Black Staple Classic. Source of Plowshares, this is an exile of course, and it's control against life. You'll see later, you might be able to do some really nasty stuff with this. Unmake, it's an exile effect for 3 mana, black or white, which is nice. The War Report, this might win you the game. It doesn't look like a card that wins you the game, but it might. Just imagine token decks and the Vizkopa Guildmage. Just saying. It's crazy actually. And there's also in EDH there tends to be a large number of artifacts on the battlefield. So this really takes advantage of that. Now for the sorceries, this I just added recently. The Approach of the Second Sun. I love this card. It's beautiful. So for those who have never seen this, if it was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win the game. Otherwise, put Approach of the Second Sun into its owner's library, 7th from the top, and you gain 7 life. So this is kind of like Impending Doom spell. So you play this and you're like, okay, 7 turns, guys. Which, to be fair, in EDH, that's a lot of time. Also, to be fair, in EDH, there's a lot of ways to actually get rid of the 7 cards that lie above it. So yeah. Alright, Blood Tribute, you half somebody's life total, and if you can tap an untapped vampire, which there's some in this deck, actually there's a lot of them in this deck, you also gain that much life. Meaning, with a Vizkopa Guildmage or a Defiant Bloodlord, most of the time you can kill an opponent with this. It depends on the rounding. Sometimes the rounding will probably make it so that you not quite kill the opponent, you'll have like 1 life left or something. But it's pretty good. Day of Judgment, classic. Death Grasp, deals X damage to creature or player, you gain X life, which is nice in this deck. Depth to the Deathless, so it's X, 2 white, 2 black, and each opponent loses 2 times X life, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Again, with the Defiant Bloodlord and Vizkopa Guildmage, this can lead to some massive destruction effects. Again, with Defiant Bloodlord and the Vizkopa Guildmage, this can be a massive blowout. So let's just imagine again this situation: 4 players, Vizkopa Guildmage. To be fair, if you activate the Vizkopa Guildmage and still have like so much mana you can activate this thing for a huge amount, you probably are in a good position. But let's just assume it anyway. Let's just assume it you can trigger it for 5. That means everybody loses 10 life, which would be 30 life, and you gain 30, and the Vizkopa will make them lose another 30. That's 40 life lost for each of them. This is crazy. So yeah, of course you'll have to have like 15 mana for that, but still, you see the potential in this is huge. Exsanguinate, again with the Defiant Bloodlord and the Guildmage, this can be nasty. In Garruk's Wake is one of the coolest board wipes I can think of, because it's a one-sided board wipe, which I massively love.
Merciless Eviction gives me a lot of choices what I want to remove from the battlefield, which is nice. Obzedat's Aid lets me put something from the graveyard directly onto the battlefield again, which can be very neat. So, Repay in Kind. Each player's life total becomes the lowest life total among all players. It's a nice card to play. If everybody gangs up on you, that's the repayment for it. Or if basically somebody's very low, you can play this and then finish everybody off, potentially. Rout. It's a board wipe with the additional option to play it instantly, which I think is amazing. And Burial Rites lets me get something from the graveyard to the battlefield, and it has flashback. Vindicate. It's just a simple destroy target permanent. Alright, now to the artifact. Alhameret's Archive. If you could gain life, you gain twice that life instead. If you draw a card, except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So the second ability is cool, very cool indeed, but the first one is the thing that makes this amazing. Together with the other creature that doubles your life gain, yeah, you can see where this leads. The Chalice of Life. Let me just click on that real quick, because it has 2 sides. The first side, it's an artifact for 3, and the first side is basically you gain 1 life for a tap, which is not that amazing, of course. If you have 10 life more than your starting life, that means 15 EDH, of course, you get the Chalice of Death. And for 5 tap, you can let target player lose 5 life. I just like to have this constant stream of either life gain or just let player lose life. I just like it to have something constant like this. The Elixir of Immortality, I think, is a very good EDH card in any way, so you can get your graveyard back, and you get life, which is cool in this deck. There's the 3 Orzhov Keyrune Cluestone Signet thingy. Then there's the Pristine Talisman, gives me mana and life. Nice combo there. And the Tainted Sigil. This, I just stumbled upon this randomly in my collection. I didn't even know this existed. So basically you sacrifice the Tainted Sigil, you gain life equal to the total life lost by all players this turn. Can you even imagine? I mean, just the depth to the Deathless, even without the Defiant Bloodlord. Even without it. You pay 5 for X5 for the depth to the Deathless. That is again 10 life for everybody. You tap this, sack. Yeah, you all lose again 30 life. You're dead. It's amazing. I didn't know this existed. That's kind of amazing. Well of Lost Dreams. If you like gaining life and drawing cards, this is the best thing. Whenever you gain life, you may pay X, where X is less than or equal to the amount of life you gained. If you do, draw X cards. So this is amazing in 2 ways. Of course, every time you gain life, you may get that equal amount of cards. But it's also amazing that you can pay less. So even if you have just 1 mana open, for example, that Chalice of Life becomes suddenly a card drawing engine, you know? Just for 1 mana, which is kind of amazing. Now, let's move on to the enchantments. There's the Campaign of Vengeance. Whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. Just neat little ping effects. Near-Death Experience. I know what you're asking, why the hell is this card in this deck? It's a bad card. It's really, 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 a really bad card. I know this. I don't care. Basically, I put this in because sometimes I like to make decks that are ridiculous, or at least some cards of them are ridiculous. And I swear to you, if one day I will win with this card, and I'm gonna laugh my ass off if it happens. Seriously. If you win an EDH with near-death experience, you just won. You won the game. You won the life. You won everything. Good job. Alright, next up, the Necromancer's Covenant. When Necromancer's Covenant enters the battlefield, exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard. Then put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield for each card exiled this way. So yeah, you can gain a ton of zombies this way. Also, zombies you control have lifelink. Just
like that. But you can, of course, sometimes there will be the moment where you want to do this on an opponent's graveyard, even though he'll get a ton of zombies. But sometimes it might be important. 1000 lashes, it's a pacifism, but the pacified creature will make its controller lose 1 life in each of that controller's upkeeps, which is pretty cool. Phyrexian Arena, standard for this deck, and that 1 life loss is so not painful. The Pillory of the Sleepless, which is again pretty much the same as 1000 lashes, with the exception that it does not prevent activation of abilities. The Tainted Remedy, in case you play against somebody else who has a lot of life gain. So if an opponent would gain life, that player loses that much life instead. Coincidentally, with the Swords to Plowshares, you can actually kill somebody with that. Just saying. And now here comes another card, which is technically bad, or I think it's really bad. Very situational, but I really love it, and that's why it's in this deck. Okay, I'll try to pronounce it. Triskaidekaphobia. I think that's correct. Which means the fear of the number 13. Yes, so at the beginning of your upkeep, you either choose that each player with exactly 13 life loses the game and each player gains 1 life, or each player with exactly 13 life loses the game and each player loses 1 life. So yeah, there will also be the day where I win with this, and it's gonna be glorious. Sorin Markov, as we move on to the Planeswalker, he's the first one. So his +2 ability lets me deal damage to creatures or players and gain life. The -2 ability is actually quite brutal in EDH because it just sets somebody to 10 life, basically puts a guillotine over their head, and you're like, yeah, that's your life total now, go and die. And the fun thing is you can activate it as soon as you play him, as soon as turn 6 rolls around, sometimes earlier depending on your ramp. It's just like, yeah, you're out of the game almost, goodbye. If you ever go to the -7 ability, you can control target player's turn, which also can be really sick. And there is another Sorin as the second Planewalker. This time it's the Grim Nemesis. He comes in with 6 loyalty, which is pretty neat. His +1 is reveal top card of your library and put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to the converted mana cost of that card. So yeah, card draw plus life loss. What else do you want? And the -X is Sorin Grim Nemesis deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker and you gain X life. Again, you can just play him and kill a creature or a planeswalker with 6 life or less. Which is amazing in my opinion. Alright, let's move on to the lands. There's not much to talk about here. I have a Blighted Steppe in here, which in this deck again can become a kill condition for some reason. Because you can sacrifice it and gain 2 life for each creature you control. Just, you know, couple this with something like, let's say, the Necromancer's Covenant. Play this, have a... You of course have to have one of your win conditions out, either the Defiant Bloodlord or something like that, and then just crack your Blighted Steppe, somebody's dead. It's pretty neat. The other ones, I mean, there's a lot of these dual lands. There's the City of Brass, because the 1 damage it deals to you whenever you use it is absolutely negatable in our deck. What else is there? The Forsaken Sanctuary, Godless Shrine, just very standard double lands. For those who are interested how many swamps I run because of the Cryptghast, it's 7 swamps at the moment. I might maybe put in some more if it feels the Cryptghast is a bit bad. Not quite sure about that. But yeah, other than that, we have all of the basic dual lands that you can get without too much hassle. Godless Shrine, of course, is also a swamp, so this one counts as well, which is pretty nice. Alright, so I think this was a good overlook over this deck. So basically build up some creatures, put them on the board, and then start draining people every turn, drain them whenever they do something, and get your win condition out and absolutely destroy people. What is this deck vulnerable against? I think it's very vulnerable against if there's a really dedicated control deck on the board that counters just important spells, because you're very reliant on combos. You need to have Bloodlord out and then do something. You need to have this out and then do something. So a good control deck can stop that quite reliably. Also, since the two kill effects with the whenever you gain life, an opponent loses life, since both of these effects are coupled onto creatures, decks with a lot of destruction can actually stop that quite well. Also, I think this deck might be a bit weak in times against these big creature rush decks. So, I mean, maybe a Goblin EDH might be very good against this token EDH. Of course, there's ways against it, as you have seen with maybe the War Report plus Defiant Bloodlord will end that deck, but that's 2 cards. You specifically need to end this deck. So, yeah, if you get overrun, then all the life gain in the world will not save you, of course. There's a few board wipes, but still, I think you could be a bit susceptible to creature-heavy decks. But yeah, I think overall it's a fun deck to play. There might be a problem that you draw hate from everybody since you tend to drain everybody. But yeah, you just need to be a smart politician to avoid this hate at times. But yeah. Alright, this has been another EDH deck from me, and I hope you liked this one. I'll see you next time for another Magic the Gathering video in a few weeks. Until then, take care.